Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into the IDP Plus. Wow, Mailbag show.
Mailbag.
I'm sorry about that. Man, the IDP Plus got me. I'm like froze for a second there. Whew. Sorry for a little delay. We're having some technical difficulties with a couple things, but we're in. It is almost the end of February. Crazy.
Crazy.
Where did a couple months go? I am Justin Frye at FFF Ballers on X. He's Joe Harlow at Jolo63. As always, check out our website or Discord server. We've got lots of great content coming out. We'll talk a little bit more about some of our content that articles dropping this week and next week, because we get some fantastic stuff coming out about the combine, which is in full swing. And I don't know about you, but my X feed is just blowing up with all sorts of content.
Yeah, just started to today a little bit. It's like, oh, there's so much stuff, so many things to parse through.
Yeah. And as always, ask us questions as we go and shoot in questions to mailbag@idpguys.org, and we'll answer them on the show. Always looking for more questions. So with that, we'll hop into some questions. And the first one, we'll talk about the combine. So the real question is, does it matter? What do you think, Joe? Does the combine matter to you?
I don't think it super matters for us, especially in the fantasy sphere. It matters for NFL draft. It's more medicals and interviews where it matters. Like the testing numbers are awesome. It's cool. It's fun to see. Just like seeing humans that are that massive moving in that way is just like it's crazy. But really, in the end, it's not the testing numbers. The on-field drills aren't super important. I mean, you look at Adetoma Adebaware last year, who had maybe top 5 combine performance ever, but was a 4th rounder on tape, so he went in the 4th round. Then they don't super matter. It's fun to see, but I do think really what it comes down to is in the end, if in fantasy draft you're between 2 players, take the one who had like the same 4th. If the both 2 players were taken in the 4th round, and you're kind of between a couple, whoever had the better testing numbers, maybe as a tiebreaker, but in the end, it's not going to make a huge difference. I don't think.
Yeah. I think I, in general, agree with that. Yeah. So it kind of tangentially matters. Like, it does not directly matter. However, what I will say is I do think that there are instances where it affects draft stock a little bit. Like, my article that dropped today, we'll talk about in a little bit, was talking about defensive players to watch the combine, and someone like a Jaden Hicks, safety, Washington State. His speed, his long speed, his change direction is going to matter. And while for us it might not be directly applicable, if his speed doesn't come in at a certain threshold, then NFL teams are going to drop him from a 2nd rounder to a 5th rounder because of that. And then that definitely matters. But it's not like a direct, oh, this guy didn't hit this threshold, so I'm not going to take him. There are some of those. It's definitely a red flag when receivers run higher than 4.6 on offense. Defense, it's a little harder to like.
Yeah, and even now, it's not even teams really don't drop them much for that anymore. Throughout the seasons, you have GPS tracking, like teams know how fast players are, and game speed is so much different than, and especially they have so much time to practice or not. And we'll get into some other players who aren't practicing or participating, I guess. But
I mean, a couple of years ago, Kyron was the consensus RB3 going into combine week. Put up a 4.7.
He was still always seen as the 3rd or 4th rounder in NFL circles.
So he went in the late 5th?
I think he was still a 4th rounder, wasn't he?
Oh, I thought he fell.
I'll double check that. He went. Oh yeah, he was a 5th rounder, but him, I don't think it was as much of a speed thing as it was he was tiny. I think he had an injury as well. I could be misremembering that, but I don't know. But overall, I don't think it's someone like a Trayvon Walker who also had a great combine. He was still seen super high. Like the Jaguars were going to take him one, even if he didn't participate at the combine. So,
yeah. Someone else I highlighted in my article, I do think it will matter for. So, like Nolan Smith last year blew up the combine, and I do think that boosted his stock a little bit because it was not all there on tape, but you could see the traits there on tape. The production just wasn't there. And someone that is going to be directly applicable to, and I think that came out in one of the tweets on X today, as well as in my article, is Chop Robinson. He is, I mean, I put it in the article, basically, he is my pick for this year's Nolan Smith. I do think he was already projected to go higher than Smith, but I think it likely could push him into the top 20 if he goes out and runs in the 4.4s and jumps. I think I saw like a 10-foot broad jump was what they're expecting, in somewhere in the 4.4s for speed in the 40. If he does something like that, yeah, I could see him probably, I don't know. I'm blanking on the teams in the late teens right now. I know the Steelers are at 20 again. I don't think they'll take him. Seattle would make a lot of sense.
I can see the Colts too. Just
the Rams, 19, need a pass rusher always. I do think they'll take Latu if he's there, but
Rams aren't even going to have that pick. Definitely. I think they're going to trade it for Brian Burns, but we'll see what happens. See if we get a nice little tag and trade. Could be fun. That's another later discussion for another day, though.
I'm not giving up a first in a tag and trade. I'm sorry. Even for a receiver.
Oh, I absolutely would. That's, again, another conversation.
Not if I'm paying him a crazy amount of money, too.
Montez Sweat got a 34th overall pick. And talent-wise, Brian Burns is...
That was a 2. I'm paying a 2.
I mean, talent difference, though. But semantics, not the point right now. Move on from there. But, yeah, it's fun. It's interesting. Really, the main stuff that's going to come out of it are medicals, like a Michael Penix Jr., Leatu Latu. What are their medicals like? Interviews. We've seen a couple big trades. The Matthew Stafford and Russell Wilson trades have gone down at the combine over the past 3 years. I know the Russell Wilson was. I think the Stafford one was pretty much done at the combine, I thought. But
I think you'll see a lot of discussion. There was some reporting yesterday, I think, on the Patriots and Vikings talking a deal for 3 for 12 plus. So they were going to circle back at the combine. So you could see potentially the top 3 picks solidified for which teams are going to pick there. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington moved back. I don't think they will. The Patriots, it wouldn't shock me. Just so many holes on that roster right now. If they get 3 first-round picks from the Vikings to then move back and pick an offensive tackle at 12 anyway, I think they would do something like that.
Even the Raiders coming up. But there is a little bit of smoke for Washington moving up to pick 1, which would be, I would be fascinated what the compensation there would look like.
Yeah, I've seen some people basically saying it's a 2 this year and a 1 next year or something. Basically give the pick back that they gave for Sweat.
Mm-hmm.
And then also their first next year.
Wow. That'd be something.
Yeah. I don't see Chicago doing that.
No. I mean,
not if you're getting a 2 for Fields already.
Yeah. Unless they have 2 quarterbacks with pretty much the same grade, then why not? But who knows what individual boards look like, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a long-winded answer there, but I think it's in the end they matter, but not as much as like you see a 40-yard dash, a bench press, and a vert number and like, oh, those are great. That means this player is awesome. I don't think it's that level.
Yeah, there's some stats that matter, but yeah, in general, I'm not super worried about it. So
yeah, I know one that I'm excited to see is like Chop Robinson. As you alluded to, his 10-yard split could be absurd. Should be absurd. His first step is insane. So could be a fun one there.
we shall see. Yeah, I'm curious to see all those defensive linemen. I want to see what Latu athletically tests like. That's one where I'm curious how athletic is he.
Mm-hmm.
But also his is like you brought up the medicals. Lietu Latu and Peyton Wilson are the two that just what are the medicals going to say? We're not probably going to get an answer to that directly this week, but curious because he was medically redshirted or not medically retired, sorry, at Washington before he transferred to UCLA. So be interesting to see what those medicals come back.
It will be. So do you want to get into the next question?
Sure. Pre-free agency buys and sells. Let's see. How do you want to do this? You want to start with buys?
Yeah, let's start with IDP buys as
Sure.
the IDP Plus show. Do you want to go ahead and go first?
Sure. My pre-free agency buy is Josh Metellus. So one thing, there's a couple kind of things that I'm looking for a buy right now, and one is I want them to have a defined role that I know. Like, if you're going to take a shot on someone, they better be super talented because there's a lot of upside and downside when buying someone right now. That's why a lot of people will shy away from buying running backs. That's why I don't have a linebacker here. I would be more tempted to sell a linebacker. I'd buy a pass rusher at the elite level, Danielle Hunter, Brian Burns, Josh Allen, those types of guys. Just if someone's wavering with the uncertainty of where they could go.
Spoilers.
Even like a Bryce Huff might go somewhere. He might be someone you could buy a little cheaper right now before he goes into a bigger role. But for me, Metellus, Harrison Smith, I think he retires. He's on like a big deal that I think the Vikings either move on and he retires or maybe they restructure him one more time. But either way, Metellus will play the same role he played last year, or he'll take over the Harrison Smith role as the box safety. And regardless, whichever one he does, you're probably getting a top 12 DB. Now, that's a little hard to project year to year, but that role being top 12 is enough for me to be willing to buy him so that even if he's, say, DB 20, like as long as I'm not paying an exorbitant price, I'm on board with buying him right now.
Makes sense. No, his usage will be very interesting. This year it was literally all over the place. I think he played 13 different alignments and stuff. It was crazy, but
yeah, I do think ideally Harrison Smith comes back or they bring someone else in to play the strong safety role, which I do think is possible because the strong safety class in free agency is kind of bonkers right now. You can see a lot of movement, I think, between Cameron Curl, Xavier McKinney. Winfield's not moving, and he plays more deep anyway. But even a cheaper option like why am I blanking on his name? The Seahawks safety that they bought from the Jets.
Oh, which one?
They got from the Jets. What? I'm sorry.
The safety from the Jets or from the Seahawks?
Seahawks from the Jets originally. They traded 2 first-round picks to get him.
Oh, Jamal.
Yeah.
Right. He's
he's going to be a free agent. He's going to get cut. So, he's going to be a cheaper option. So, yeah. There's options out there if Minnesota wants to go sign a strong safety.
So. Do you think kind of little aside, do you think Duggar stays in New England? Do you think he gets the tag or signs somewhere else?
There's I see very little incentive to tag him. That tag number is like 17 or 18 million at safety.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, to be honest. The cap exploding, I think, is going to push the tag more towards the premium positions. Like if you're not a locked in loaded top 5 guy, I don't know how you would Winfield's the only one that even remotely makes sense to tag at safety.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could transition tag him or something like that, non-exclusive tag him where you drop the number a little bit. But I mean, I think they let Duggar test free agency and say, hey, we can sign McKinney. We can draft a guy in the 3rd or 4th round that's going to be solid to play there. Because this class isn't thought of as elite, but I feel like there's quite a few names at safety that I kind of like. And I mean, the Patriots are going to emphasize youth this year, so
have to.
Yeah, if they don't re-sign him, I could see them just drafting a replacement in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So my IDP buy, I went 2 names here, smuggle a little bit, both at edge rusher position. Jermaine Johnson, we've talked about a lot on this show, or I guess the waiver wire show, and in Sicoli's newsletter. It's come up a lot as a huge breakout player who started his breakout. One of those to get in before really breaks out, especially with Bryce Huff leaving in free agency this year. Most likely, he's really going to have more of a full-time role. So I think he's one to get in before he's too expensive. And then Brian Burns also is another one off a struggling year. Just really don't think the Panthers, or if he's on a new team, whatever, are going to be as bad, which will give him more opportunity. And he's still an elite talent at the position. One of those to buy. He's depreciated value right now off a rough season. So those are my buys there.
All right. You want to do buys on offense, or should we do sells on defense first?
We can stick with the buys.
All right. So my buy, even though I typically would not recommend buying a running back,
I debated the same. Figured you would take him though.
As a Pats fan, this is going to sound like a homer pick, but I'm going to say Ramondre Stevenson. He's ridiculously low right now. I feel like everyone's worried about, they signed Zeke last year. He didn't play that well this year, blah, 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 blah. Their new offensive coordinator ran the Browns offense where they've been handing the ball off to Nick Chubb so much. They're going to fix the offensive line. It's going to be better. And they really don't have incentive to bring in a veteran running back. They might draft one in the 4th or 5th round, but they're not going to spend a day 2 pick on one, I wouldn't think. Belichick's gone. I don't see them spending draft capital weirdly anymore. So I don't see a path to him not being a 65-70% guy minimum. And not only can he do the Nick Chubb between the tackles role, he also has shown out as a pass catcher in the past. And even if they have a rookie or a veteran, it doesn't matter to me. The offense will be better this year than it was last year. He was kind of beat up a little bit. I don't think they did him any favors by sitting him through parts of training camp and not letting him ramp up with everyone else. I think it kind of hurt him a little bit to not get the contact. They were trying to protect him, but I just think it set him back a little bit in his just kind of preparedness for the grind. So my opinion, probably wrong, but I'm excited for him, and especially in redraft. I mean, Dynasty, yeah, he's up there. He's 25. He probably will be. I wouldn't be shocked if they approach him for an extension for a couple more years. He was a 3rd or 4th round pick, so he's not making that much money. So he should be open to an extension, I would think, depending on what the top of the market running backs get this offseason.
Yeah, makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, he was one of the first names I thought of, but again, assumed you would take him. Didn't want to steal your thunder there.
You could have. I come up with someone else.
Say that again. Sorry.
I said you could have. I would have come up with someone.
Yeah, but I stayed true to my heart as well. I hedged a little bit and went with the Bears running back room. This is more a Roschon Johnson deal. But to touch on Khalil Herbert first, final year of his rookie deal. If they end up not trusting Roschon Johnson, they're gonna just run him into the ground. 1 year left, might as well. He's been solid. Better when he's been more of a committee back than when he's had the big role, but he's still been decent in some of those games. So I think you can probably get pretty cheap right now. I haven't looked at any recent trades, but I can't imagine you're paying more than a mid two for him. Or do you think we're even paying that like a super flex?
I wouldn't even pay that. I mean, this year's class is going to be a lot of second round picks, so I don't expect it.
Yeah. Yeah. So then Roschon Johnson's really the main name. As many of you know who have been listening to me or know me at all. He was my running back 3, I think, last year. I absolutely adored the prospect profile. I think he's great to have with a rookie quarterback. He's a very good pass blocker, and he's a good receiving back as well, which is great to have, especially with the Caleb Williams type. And their O-line people keep saying it sucks. It really doesn't, but it's fine. It's not great, but it is fine, especially the bookends. They have their tackles. So having just some more help there, pass catcher. I don't expect him to be Nick Chubb, but I think he could end up being like how Ramondre Stevenson's kind of gone. I think is a decent comp. I think he has a little more juice as a prospect than Mondre did, but I think if he can end up with that sort of career, that sort of season, it was his second season when Ramondre kind of broke out and took over, right?
He showed flashes in year one, where partway through the year he kind of came on, and his second year he kind of took over a little bit from Damian Harris.
Yeah, so I think it could be something very similar to that. And again, pass protection will keep you on the field. Yeah. And he's already a top 5 back in the league in that, I think. So that's being on the field for that is big. They did already show they trust him a bit with putting him in those high leverages blocking situations and dump off situations. And hopefully with a new coordinator, they actually utilize that a little more and a quarterback who can read that. But again, normally don't want to say buy a running back. I think it's funny that we both did, but low, I think, for the Bears ones. I've seen in one quarterback leagues people saying they wouldn't even give 303 for Roschon. I'm like, I will do that very quickly. I'd give up an early third for him and a super flex, honestly. Dart throw there. But
I'd be more tempted in last year's class. This year's class is kind of wild how good. So it depends on what you need. If you're looking for a receiver, you could actually get a day 2 receiver probably in that range still. That's going to give you some value there. It's where if you prefer that, you could get something. But it's going to be interesting.
It will be. It will be indeed.
Let's touch on this last buy question we just got before we hop over to sells.
Sounds good to me.
What up, Santa? So asking for deep buys, a la Justin Matabuke, who, for those who didn't see that this morning, the Ravens basically came out and said, if we don't get something done, we're tagging him. So he's not going anywhere. I think Barmore's too big a name probably to throw in here because he's one that I'm expecting a huge year from. Maybe Servassier Dennis. The Bucks cap situation is interesting. He was I think he was a 5th round pick last year. He's kind of undersized in that same mold of Devin White, Levante David. I don't know that they can get. I mean, I don't think they want Devin White back, to be perfectly honest. But once they sign Baker and Mike Evans, I'm not sure how much cap space they're going to have left. So it wouldn't shock me if he ascends into that will linebacker role that White and KJ Britt kind of played.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he can do that pretty well. So that's a deeper cut there. I also am intrigued by, he might have been added at the end of the year, but PJ Locke in Denver, when the suspension came down for, I'm blanking on his name, but their safety next to Justin Simmons last year, he went out and put up like 7 tackle plus performances every single week. He's a pending unrestricted free agent, but it wouldn't shock me with the Broncos cap situation if they bring him back on a couple-year deal to make him the starter next to Simmons. So he's one that I'm keeping an eye on to see where he winds up. I'm hoping he comes back.
Those are good ones. A couple I'd go with, really kind of just take a look at the back ends of your draft, see who underperformed as rookies. Second-year guys, Sam Williams, that Santa threw out is a good one. Just opportunity very much could be there, especially as Dexter Lawrence. That's not his name. What's his name? DeMarcus Lawrence. That's the one. Gets older and needs to be on the inside more. Williams could break out. Some for me, similar mold, Derek Hall for the Seahawks and then BJ Ojolari for the Cardinals. Both were top 35, top 40 picks in the draft last year. Just didn't see the field a huge amount, but did flash when they did. There's still not a huge amount of competition in those rooms, especially in Seattle with Uchenna Nwosu coming off injury. And the other rusher whose name I am blanking on, Darrell Taylor, is a free agent.
Boy Mafe.
He's there as well. And having another good one does help, but they need edge rusher. They might just stick with their second rounder. Ojolari does not have much competition, if any. Is there anyone else in that room noteworthy? Zaven Collins.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say, this was like names, but I forget who they took the year before. They had like a second and a third rounder they picked the year before that I'm blanking on right now. Yeah. One of them was better off kicking inside anyway, though. So
yeah, but yeah, a lot of it's going to be just guys that like last year, like Aquan Martin for me, the Commanders safety. I think he could be a good slot box safety.
I think Keon White's going to play a lot more since the Patriots cut Lawrence Guy. Foskey might see a bump up in New Orleans. I wasn't biggest fan of his. I didn't think athletically he was that great, but I mean, he's an interesting name. Quan Martin, yeah.
You've brought up Trenton Simpson a few times throughout these shows. Not sure how deep he is, but
so question for you. Well, since we're on to linebacker now.
Yes.
We'll talk about another piece of news that just dropped today. The Broncos came out and said, by the way, we're going to play Drew Sanders at edge most likely this season, which sucks, I'll be honest.
It makes sense. It sucks for fantasy, but it makes sense.
I really thought he would. I was hoping he'd play linebacker. I mean, Jewell's a free agent. I think Singleton's back. I can't remember.
I think so.
But if Jewell walks, I thought they might try to play him as their other starting linebacker. So, I mean, it's cheaper to sign a linebacker than a pass rusher, though. So I can see the path for why they would put Sanders there. But at the same time, that sucks for people who drafted Sanders to be a stashed linebacker. Shout out Shandon.
Who sniped him for me in a bunch of leagues. So thanks, buddy. But yeah, that one really sucks for fantasy. I think it makes sense. Like he was a really good rusher at Arkansas and at this limited time at Bama as well. But yeah, it sucks. He was pretty 50-50 this year for the Broncos, which.
Speaking of deep names, how deep do you consider? Goodness, is it Baron Browning? No, who's the?
Yeah,
Is he the
For the
pass rusher?
other edge rusher for the Broncos?
Yeah, I don't know if he's probably rostered.
I think so. I would think so, at least.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of just other deeper names. Maybe this is one we can hit next week with a little more prep, get some more names at the top of the head.
Yeah.
Scrolling through some mock drafts that have happened, the IDP plus circles recently. Doesn't help that sleeper ADP for IDPs is not up to snuff yet.
Is it ever? Bless you.
Thank you. It's better at some points than others.
Yeah, I was saying, was it last summer? I think I forget who was just like 3 years retired, was sitting there at the top of it was KJ Wright.
He is still at 208.
KJ Wright?
Yeah.
Come on, sleeper.
Yeah. Even Zeke is still in the top 150. Alan Lazard's 157, so even offense there. Richard Sherman, 214.
Shout out to the 2015 Seahawks.
Woo! There you go again, Shannon. You're welcome. Heavy Shannon show, apparently. Do we want to talk about Puka Nacua too?
I'm not buying him. I'll say that.
Oh God, Lord no.
I mean, if someone really doesn't believe in him, I guess I'd buy him. But
yeah,
like for the price, agnostic to him. I'll just leave him on whoever's got him.
Yeah.
All right. Sells. I guess we should hit some sells. You got some spicy sells in here.
I do. I went spicy very intentionally. I guess let's go IDP first again.
I mean, I think mine are too, to be perfectly honest. But
I like them. I think all of ours, they make sense, but they're spicy. So first one, this is one I've also been saying for a while, but it is Foye Oluokun for the Jags. He's been awesome for the past three years in Jacksonville. I think it's been 2 or 3 years. He's been great for fantasy. His on-field product, though, is really starting to drop. Like he's lost a step. He's 28. He'll be 29 at the start of the year, I believe, or 29 at some point this season. It's one of those, I think he'll still be good for fantasy, but it's one of those get out a year early before a year late. I still think you can get legitimate linebacker one price for him. But in Devin Lloyd, who is a very volatile player, still did show a lot of good this year, and I think should be taking over that linebacker one role eventually, whether it's some point this year or going into 2025. So this is very much one of those where just get out a year early. You can still get this time next year. You won't be able to get linebacker one prices for Foye.
What's his contract look like? Because we didn't bring him up, but Chad Muma is an interesting
Go Pokes.
deep cut that Santa was talking about.
Muma I like a lot. So this is the last year Foye is under contract. I did not realize that. I thought he had one more year.
So yeah, great time to sell him and great time to buy Chad Muma if someone's willing to move him.
Yeah, that was a 3-year, $45 million deal for Foye. Good for him. Bad for like a 6th-round pick out of Yale.
Yeah,
200 overall.
Safety, who's picked that. All right, so my sell, Quay Walker. So I will admit there is some risk on this one with the transition at defensive coordinator. The Packers are going from a 3-4 to a 4-3. However, where are they going to play him, and what role do they envision for him? If he plays the weak side, the will role in that defense, I could see him being fine again. But he's still got that first-round pick price tag attached to him where people are like, oh, well, maybe he'll put it together in year 3. And I think this is the last year where if you have any questions on him at all, you can still get a premier price for the name value of Quay Walker being that first-round pick in the NFL draft a couple years ago. John Macri from PFF talks all the time about linebackers and whether they play zone or man. And one thing I will say is the new defensive coordinator likes to play man coverages in his defense. So I do think there's a reasonable shot that hurts Quay Walker because he might be locked up on tight ends and running backs a lot more versus playing underneath in zone where he can follow the quarterback's eyes and just go make a play. So that scares me quite a bit with him. And for me, I'll sell and get out and try to get a more stable, albeit probably older linebacker instead, someone who's been performing at a higher level than Walker, who's been right around linebacker 36-ish in his first couple of years. So I don't know.
So, Foye or Quay?
I'll take Foye because Foye is going to give me the elite year this year.
Yep. I think that one really is if you're a contender, Foye. If you're in a rebuild or competitive struggle sort of deal, go with Quay. That's kind of where I'm at. But
yeah,
it's a much more interesting question than I thought it would be, frankly.
Yeah.
I just saw some news that it's not really news, but the Todd Bowles said that the Buccaneers will bring in another running back to help take the load off of Rachaad White.
So that's not surprising. I could see I'd like to see Braylon Allen's probably going to go earlier than they would want to pick one, but an Audric Estime would make a lot of sense to me.
He made it, from what I saw, seemed like it'd be more of a vet than a rookie.
Okay. Then maybe I don't think they're going to pay a premium price, but Devin Singletary is always a really good running back that would be a good fit. Because I want White to keep the pass catching role that he's shown he excels at, but you're looking for someone to take carries away from him.
Yeah.
So I could
think it could be one of those that ends up being better for him. Like if ends up being a 70, 65, or if he's like a 60% workload instead of 80, and they upgrade the O-line a little bit, that could be better for him.
So it's not going to be better for him than it was this current year. I'll just put that one out there right now. He was top 12 running back. He was Christian McCaffrey workload levels, getting pass catching, getting all the carries. So that aspect of it probably will not help him. But I do
think be less frustrating to play, I think, or to watch.
Yes. So yeah. Overall, it's probably not good. When they do sign one, that is when his buy window opens, though, and I would be willing to buy him.
Yeah, he was RB5 this year, and I don't think anyone really saw him as RB5 for dynasty purposes. But when they still think he's probably top 20 dynasty running back, maybe closer to 15.
KTC has him top 12, if I remember right, when I was checking for my sell at running back. Speaking of which, we'll just hop over to that.
Yeah,
Tajay Spears.
Yes.
Who is KTC's RB 14. White was above him. That's why I remember where he was. I think he was 12. Because 13 was Pacheco, 15 was Josh Jacobs. And
Josh Jacobs is another big buy. I did not realize he was that low until I saw the doc.
Yeah, I like Spears a lot. And I get the excitement for him. But you're still projecting him into a new offense with a quarterback who's still – their emphasis this year is going to be developing him. They have a top 5 cap space, I believe, like 70, 80 million, something like that. Wild amounts where they can upgrade the offensive line, but they can most likely – he's not going to be a bell cow. Like NFL teams just don't want a bell cow running back for the most part now. They want people. They don't want when he goes down. They don't want to have a huge drop off. So they would rather bring someone else in to split the work with him, even if they're slightly less effective when that backup's in there. So to me, this price is just kind of wild, and some of the names in there with him. I mean, Jacobs being after him, I would do that 1-for-1 in a heartbeat.
Oh,
Jacobs
so
is
good.
going to sign a 2 or 3 year contract with a lot of guaranteed money on it to probably be a bell cow. He might actually get that kind of workload, especially if he goes to like the Chargers, even if he's not a bell cow. I mean, 65%, something like that. I would take Jacobs. I mean, and think about the landing spots for these free agent running backs. You're talking Baltimore, Philly, Dallas, Chargers. Like, are the 4 that are likely going to pay up for running backs.
Yeah.
Where's the bad spot there? Like, the bad teams aren't going to pay up for running backs. The good offenses are because they might be a running back away. So, like, and this year's running back class is viewed as a quote down class. So, yeah.
Draft wise, to clarify.
Yes, draft was the free agency running back class. I think it was Schefter tweeted it's the best of like all time or something ridiculous. Yeah.
Wild.
So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you could offer Spears right now to a Saquon Barkley manager and get Saquon.
Probably good.
It's why, and I would do that in a heartbeat. If you want to get off running back and get into a young receiver, you could offer George Pickens, who's a little below him. Yeah, there's all sorts of options. Bryce Young was in that section where he's probably cheap enough in a super flex that you could offer Spears, Bryce Young. It's kind of wild. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'll happily sell at that price.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
buy a running back down at closer, buy a Devin Singletary for a lot cheaper and get similar production. Like, I mean,
and this is not an indictment on Spears. I know
no,
both of us really liked him. He was top 5 running back for me, maybe 6. I don't remember. I had Achan in there, but
there is the one other caveat that I didn't mention. Sorry. The medicals from Indianapolis where they were talking about his knee. He basically, from what Twitter doctors say, people that are PTs and stuff that I trust, basically say this is the Todd Gurley injury all over again. So when he falls off a cliff, it will be immediate and massive.
Yeah.
And like that risk, if you can move off of that, I mean, you probably already gained a whole bunch of value from last year because he was falling to mid-second in super flex leagues.
Because of that. Yeah. If you like him and want to buy him, frankly, you missed the window. It was last back end of last year was the window to buy him.
Yep.
Like, I could totally see him being, if we did a buy, sell, hold with him being a firm hold. But yeah, I think right now it's, if you can get a first rounder and some change on that, absolutely. I know Dynasty love him, and I totally get it. I do too. It's just, he's a weird spot to buy, especially. I love Will Levis more than most, but he's still a developmental sort of player. Their offense is going to be wonky. The O-line sucks. There's no receiving talent, really.
That's the thing that people bring up, though, is how many catches he had last year. And I'm like, yeah, but they had no receivers. They have a whole bunch of cap space. They probably will sign one. They'll probably draft one.
85 and some change.
So they sign one, they draft one. Now all of a sudden, what, they're going to check down all the time? No. Levis likes to push the ball downfield. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he's going to get all the receptions that he got last year either.
Yep. That's a good one. And then I did not talk about my offensive sells, right?
No, not yet, because we just had the natural transition there. But
yep, that's what it was. So this one's probably, I'd say this is the spiciest one I have, but it is the Texans wide receivers. It's Nico Collins, Tank Dell. We have, for ADP data, we have been with IDP Plus doing just some dynasty mock drafts. In the 3 we have done in the past month or two, both Tank Dell and Nico Collins have been top 40 picks, top 45 picks in all of them. I like Nico Collins a lot. I'm still hesitant on Tank Dell. With him specifically, it's like the injuries are a thing. That's always going to be part of his thing. He's a small receiver. It's one that I just don't see him being a guy you can trust 15 plus games a year. The talent, he definitely proved me wrong with my pre-draft grades and reports on him. Please don't go back and read that. But Nico, I think, is awesome. But he took him, this is his 4th year and he broke out? That also is something where third, fourth year significantly outperformed his career production, I would still think he's someone I would want to have on my team. I just bought him off of Justin in one league for Jalen Waddle. But I do think it's one where, depending on what the price is, there are people, I'm not trying to sell them, but they're definitely not off limits. And there's a lot of smoke right now that they could go and get a Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round, or Troy Franklin, another receiver.
Or they have a whole bunch of cap space to go sign Mike Evans.
Yeah. And if that happens, that's really not great. That's going to be a lot of mouths to feed. If I was playing around with my next mock draft I'm going to do, they were in a really good position to trade up and grab Brock Bowers, which would be awesome for them. And that's going to be a Brock Bowers, a Brian Thomas Jr., a Mike Evans. Those are probably the number one target on those teams, or at least a 1B. That's really going to drop them a lot. CJ Stroud is incredible. He's already a top 8 quarterback, real football, top 8 fantasy as well. I don't remember where I had him in my dynasty rankings. I think I put him at 6.
I think KTC has him at 2.
That's insane. But
yeah.
I get it, but it's a lot. And a lot of it with CJ Stroud is he's super aggressive downfield shots, which are awesome, but he was super efficient on those. And that's natural regression will happen, whether there's other mouths to feed, whether it's more interceptions, or him just regressing to be more, they're taking that away. Like we had the cover 2 thing with Patrick Mahomes, so we had to check out more.
Well, the other thing with their cap space that they brought up is they are one I didn't mention. Sorry about that. When I'm talking about running back free agents, I think they're one that's been brought up as a Saquon or Jacobs landing spot pretty frequently too. Like I said, they have cap space, and their window is wide open. They are the team I would probably place the Super Bowl bet on outside of KC as like the dark horse out of the AFC because they're going to be a little deeper.
Yeah, I would agree.
So
it's just one of those things that I think there is a very real shot where another huge name who overtakes those guys comes in. And it's like, if that happened, if they bring in Mike Evans, what is Nico Collins' value? What is Tank Dell's value? Like, I don't know.
Well,
it takes a hit.
Both of them played the X role last year too, which is the weirdest thing to me because they played Woods as the Z and Noah Brown was their slot guy. I mean, I was shocked when Dell didn't play the slot. I mean, he can play the X role, but you can't play both of them as your X receiver. So when they were both out there together, which was actually really infrequently, their snaps counts were like both around 50%, which I do think will change because they're going to set it up differently this year. I think Dell naturally moves over to that flanker and keep Collins as the X, but we'll see.
I agree there. I think it's just one of those that this time, or give it 2 months from now, and they could be just back to buys even. But right now, it's just, if you can get a haul, I think they're both top 15 receivers on KTC, but if you can get that package for them, I think they're some of the riskier names in that tier. So,
yeah. Everyone likes to be too early buying people and get that bump up from the price. But they're already priced up there. That's the thing that's happening right now is I feel like everyone's just kind of swinging more and more towards rookies and youth and everything. Like people are already asking who's going to be the next wide receiver 1 because Justin Jefferson's, quote, getting old.
Yeah, he's what, 24, 25?
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. It makes me feel old. So well. Real quick before we play buy, sell, hold, got a question from Shadow51A. DK Metcalf price check. The specific question was him versus 108 in a Superflex best ball. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I am sticking with DK. Consensus would tell you 106, 107 roughly is the tier break. 108 lines up with. I do think the tier needs to move. Add one. Scott Connor from Destination Devi was talking about this. I think he's on X at Charles Chili FFB or something like that. Was talking about this. Basically, wherever your tier break was, you need to move it because McCarthy's the draft capital is going to be there. So whether or not you agree with it, the value needs to be there for JJ to enter that tier with Neighbors, Bowers, Odunze, if you have him there, which both of us do. So my opinion, 108 is the tier break, but I'm still sticking with DK because, I mean, really, you're hoping to get that level of output from these receivers. If you need a quarterback, I guess I could see it when you're on the clock, but I'm not doing it now.
Yeah, I get it, and yeah, it's one of those things. JJ McCarthy is going top 15 unless we have a Laramie Tunsil situation or he gets hurt. But you look at Dane Brugler, Daniel Jeremiah, the draft guys, that's what they're saying. And if a quarterback goes top 15, doesn't matter if you love their tape or not. And then the team did, and they're the QB of the future.
I mean, his floor is 12 to me, right? I don't see how Sean Payton passes him up in Denver.
Yeah, but calling it 15 just to be safe. But
I mean, you go through 11, 13, 14, 11, 12, and 13. How are you getting through? What is it? The Vikings, the Broncos, and the Raiders.
Yep,
and not getting picked.
Shit, even the Saints at 14. Like it's happening. It is happening.
Yeah, I think personally, I'd love to see Atlanta at 8, but we'll see.
Atlanta or Minnesota would be where I'd love to see him, but scheme fit. But yeah, it's happening. The tier needs to move. I get it. Value-wise, 108 for DK, it's like you were saying, yeah, if you need a quarterback, I get it. It very much is like the Family Guy or Simpsons, where it's like you can either get a boat or a mystery box. It could even be a boat. It's really what it kind of turns into. If it wasn't a best ball, I think I'd be a little more willing to move DK, but in a best ball, that's
DK's got that blow-up potential.
Yeah.
And honestly, that offense is just going to get better with the new OC. I think Tyler Lockett's like a $26 million cap hit this year. I expect him to be gone.
Yep.
So, I mean, Smith and Jigba will be the underneath guy. Metcalf's the deep threat. And they're going to be a vertical passing offense, because they hired, what's his name from UW, right?
Yeah, Grubb,
yeah. So I could see him in that Odunze roll downfield, push it downfield.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you're giving me DK or Rome Odunze, if you're giving me that option, I would take Oduns. I love him as a prospect, but you can't promise that at 108. And even then, I would still want some on top just because we know what DK is. So I guess we're running on time. So do we want to do buy, sell, hold real quick? I think that's something we wanted to do.
Yeah, let's hop through those. Let's
switch it up into IDP first, since one of those names you've already brought up.
Okay, yeah. So I threw these ones together to try to trip you up because they are a pain in the butt, by the way. So defense, we're talking safeties. Josh Metellus, Julian Love, Dax Hill. Keep or buy, sell, hold.
For me, I'm probably going to buy Julian Love. I think role increase, better scheme for him. I think Metellus is my sell, even though in general, I do think he's a buy. Like, you did a really good work picking these names. And then Dax Hill's a hold. Just kind of want to see what really ends up going on with the Dax Hill Jordan Battle situation there. Yeah, Metellus, I think I don't know. Metellus and Hill was the tough one. Just Hill seemed to be trending more towards the deep safety.
Yeah,
Metellus, he could just be a cornerback. Like,
I would flip Metellus and Hill only, and I love Dax Hill, but Jordan Battle was coming on too strong with the way they were using him. He's the one, to me, that had the better role at the end of the year. So Dax kind of scares me. And the other guy in this range for us, which only really just emphasized how much I love this tier of safety, is Kyle Duggar was at safety 20 on our rankings. By the way, Metellus 16, Love 18, Hill 19. So this range was just oh my goodness, there's just so much juiciness in here. And that's kind of the way I like to build anyway, is with a lot of these second tier guys rather than paying the elite prices for the Winfields, the Derwin Jameses, the Kyle Hamiltons. That being said, I would buy Newbin if he gets a good landing spot this year.
Yeah. Agreed. So then to flip to the offensive side, this one's also super tough with Christian Watson, Terry McLaurin, and Josh Downs, who are KTC's wide receivers 36 through 38, and then 40, 38, and 44, respectively, for IDP Plus.
Yeah, so I tried to be really annoying with this one too, because McLaurin, the vet, wide receiver 1, Watson's just a huge question mark because of how good Green Bay looked in general, but I still do believe he may not be the alpha target earner, but he's still going to be their X and the way their offense runs.
Mm-hmm.
And Downs is just scary. Yeah, I'm still not sure which way I want to go.
So I'll go. I'm going to buy Terry McLaurin. He's going to have the best quarterback of his career this year. I am not as high on Jaden Daniels as some, but he's a significant upgrade. So that's a good sign for McLaurin. Offenses, we've been over Cliff Kingsbury. Not going to touch that again, but he's getting a better quarterback. He's still a good receiver. He's by far the best player of this trio, which means something. And I don't think his value, I don't think you'd have to pay a huge amount for him. I'm going to hold Josh Downs. Really, between Downs and Watson, I think you could get more for Watson, just the blow up upside. Then Downs, I think, is just going to be a steady, more slotty player who's a hold, but really that one comes down to who you can get more from.
See, I think I would buy Watson because he has the most potential to gain value to me of this trio.
I'm also not a huge fan of his skill set.
I do think if he goes back in at 80%, gets fully healthy, figures out what's going on with those hamstrings and keeps them healthy, I do think there's a top receiver. He can kind of be a discount DK Metcalf type with what he can do a little bit. I am probably holding McLaurin. Like you said, quarterback situation is getting better. He's a little older, and I think Downs people might buy for the upside more. So he's probably my sell, even though I actually just bought him in a league. But yeah, I just
don't know what Josh Downs' value is. Seems like he's going to be. I think he's going to be a really, really good football player. I don't know what his fantasy value is going to look like.
So he can stretch the field from the slot, which is good and bad. I'm just not sure will they use him, how much they'll use him, especially if, say, Brock Bowers were to fall to the Colts, because he was basically slot only. So yeah, that's my concern with Downs. I do think he's a pretty reasonable buy even in this range, though, because I do think there's upside for more. I do think he could easily be a top 30-ish receiver. I'm not sure how much higher than that he goes, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could realistically buy all of them. Christian Watson, I don't love the tape. I don't love him as a player, but I do think it's a very reasonable buy. Yeah. So, the blow up potential. So
we're gonna wrap it up, but let's run through these articles coming out last week, this week. Do you want to talk through them?
Sure. So last week we had it was a free agent preview. Gary talked about free agents at linebacker, D-line, and defensive back. And then Steve McCrory hit offensive free agents. And then I wrote about coaching changes and impacts. There were a lot of them. It was a tough article to write. It was 40% of head coaches and offensive/defensive coordinators overturned. It's crazy. This week, today, your article on combine players to watch on defense came out. Tomorrow, yours came out today, right? Yep. Mine didn't come out today, I don't think. I did the offensive side of the ball, which will come out tomorrow. Brandon Blakeney. Sorry, Brandon. That's at Brandon Lee TV. Has a rookie draft survival guide coming out later this week. And then over the weekend, you, myself, and Steve McCrory at Average Joe's _FF will be talking about some combine winners and losers. So that'll be a little more real time.
Yeah. They come out the day after. So I'll be writing starting Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Those articles will come out.
Yep.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
It'll be fun. So as always, thank you guys for tuning in and asking some great questions. And as always, reach out to mailbag@idpguys.org for any other questions, or you can reach out to Justin at FFFBallers or myself at Jolo63. You can ask us questions there. Sign up for IDP Plus, which I think we have fully made the transition now. But still, go subscribe, get onto our Discord, check the newsletters, and yeah, stay tuned. Off season's in full swing. It's the good fun time. Thank you. May the force be with you.